Poltergeist 3 was co-written, executive produced, and directed by Gary Sherman. Gary Sherman thought the idea of the city setting was just as scary as isolated suburbia. His feeling was that there are people on the other side of the wall and no one cares that you are in trouble. Craig T. Nelson was approached to play Steve Freeling in Poltergeist 3, but he declined. 2 was enough, he says. Heather O'Rourke and Zelda Rubinstein were the only original cast members to return. Joining the cast would be Tom Skerritt and Nancy Allen. And making her feature film debut, Lara Flynn Boyle. In a 2013 interview, comedian and actor Thomas Lennon claimed that he auditioned for a role in this film. Since Julian Peck had passed away from stomach cancer, Nathan Davis was brought in to play Reverend Henry Kane. Corey Burton returned to provide the voice work for Kane, although he was uncredited for this effort. Unlike all the previous films, nearly all of the special effects were live and were performed on stage. The only visual effect added in post-production was the lightning flashing over the John Hancock Center in the very final shot of the picture. Director Gary Sherman himself designed the special visual effects. At the time Poltergeist 3 began shooting in spring of 1987, Heather O'Rourke had been ill for several months with what was misdiagnosed as Crohn's disease. After O'Rourke completed filming, she returned home to California with her illness appearing to be in remission. However, in late January 1988, O'Rourke suddenly became ill again. Her condition rapidly deteriorated, and she died on February 1, 1988, barely a month after her 12th birthday, during Poltergeist 3's post-production period. After the completed film was rated PG by the MPAA in November 1987, Sherman and the studio decided to reshoot at least part of the ending with a different special effects sequence. Initially, Sherman did not want to complete the film, but pressure from the studio prevailed, and the entire ending was reshot in March 1988 using a body double stand-in for O'Rourke. In April, a re-edited version of the film including the new ending was submitted to the MPAA, after which it received a PG-13 rating. In the original ending that was scrapped after Heather O'Rourke's tragic death, when Patricia jumps through the glass pane into the apartment, she finds Carol Ann, Donna, Scott, Bruce, and Tangina frozen and dying. She then also becomes imprisoned in ice and gets attacked by Kane and her evil mirror reflection, who want the necklace. Patricia tries to repel them and declares unconditional love for her family, but trips over frozen Tangina and falls to the floor. Suddenly, Tangina frees her arm from the ice and grabs the necklace. She convinces Kane that she is the one who can take him to the other side, not Carol Ann. Kane puts his hand on the necklace, but instead of ascending, his face cracks and he explodes. The blast frees everyone, but annihilates Tangina and causes a violent thunderstorm. Patricia, Carol Ann, Donna, Scott, and Bruce finally leave the mirror dimension. Carol Ann sees a reflection of smiling Tangina in the mirror who waves at them and sheds a tear. With a shot of a rising morning sun, the movie ends. Poltergeist 3 was shot in Chicago's John Hancock Center. There were originally plans for Craig T. Nelson to return for a Poltergeist 4, but the death of Heather O'Rourke, the ensuing media scandal about the Poltergeist curse that overshadowed pretty much everything else about the movie, pretty much dissuaded producers from continuing. Many believe the Poltergeist curse comes from using real skeletons in the first film. Dominique Dunn was murdered by her ex-boyfriend shortly after the film was completed, as well as Julian Beck, dying from stomach cancer shortly after Part 2 was completed, as well as Will Sampson, dying shortly after Part 2 from post-operative kidney failure. And Zelda Rubinstein had to leave the production midway because of her mother's death. Zelda Rubinstein was nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award in 1989 and a Saturn Award in 1990. Poltergeist 3 was released on June 10, 1988. The film was panned by critics and was a box office disappointment. Poltergeist 3 wound up being the lowest grossing and least attended film in the Poltergeist trilogy. The film opened at number 5, making $4 million on its opening weekend. The film received mostly negative reviews from critics, resulting in an 18% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 17 reviews, with an average rating of 3.6 out of 10. Poltergeist 3 was released on VHS in 1989. MGM released Poltergeist 3 as a double-feature DVD with Poltergeist 2 on August 26, 2003. And on January 31, 2017, Scream Factory released a Blu-ray collector's edition of the film, including the original ending. I hope you've enjoyed this brief history on Poltergeist 3. Join me next time as we take a brief look at the remake of Poltergeist.